For the News and Observer, I'm Capitol Bureau Chief and Under the Dome host Dawn Vaughan for this latest episode for the week of June 10th, 2024. I'm here today with my politics team colleagues at the legislature, Avi Bajpai and Kyle Ingram. We're going to talk about the drama on the Senate floor, news about North Carolina abortion law, early voting, and play a clip from Senate Leader Phil Berger about abortion. But we have a lot to talk about, including really what happened in the Senate on Thursday and how that could change the rest of session, or how maybe it won't change the rest of session. So I'm going to back up for a minute before we talk about the Democratic senators walking off the House floor, not voting, holding a presser lately, campaign finance, and a mask bill. This all started with lawmakers from the chambers deciding to come up with a conference report on the mask bill compromise, which had kind of just sort of, been tabled for a little while. And Thursday morning in the Senate, I was in the Senate. Avi is at the House because you'd already gotten wind that a change was coming on the mask bill.
Yeah, we'd heard that conference report was ready to move forward. And that's what Speaker Moore announced on the House floor Thursday morning. And the House had a few items on its calendar. They moved through those bills really quickly, and then they had this plan to basically take a quick recess, send this new conference report, which would prove to be quite controversial and dominate the whole entire day's news, send it to the Rules Committee, then come back and vote on it. So lots of fast movement on this compromise.
And meanwhile, in the Senate, I'm in there really just to, there weren't any major things going on. We just go to all sessions because that's our job, and also to talk to lawmakers after the Senate, particularly Senate Leader Berger, since it was the only Senate voting session. So, we have a good-sized team, so we talk to each other about what's going on, and I know what Avi's doing with the House, and was like, I'll send you some dispatch from whatever's going on in the Senate. And then the conference report is read in the Senate and then added to the end of the calendar, so we know that this is going to move in the Senate too. And meanwhile, things sort of stalled out.
Things slowed down. Yeah, slowed down in the House. First, the Republicans had said that the Rules Committee was going to meet to basically take up the bill and then send it back to the House, and that's what we were expecting was two quick votes, House and Senate, and that would actually mean the bill could be sent to Governor Cooper immediately.
And this is all just about where we could have the mask law again, but have the medical exceptions. Right?
Yeah, this all stems from the Senate passing their version of this bill, originally a House bill, where they proposed repealing this exception. The state has had this long-standing ban on wearing masks in public for decades. There's an exception that was added during COVID for health and safety reasons. So you could wear a mask to protect your health or someone else's health. The Senate Republicans proposed eliminating that. They sent the bill to the House. The House voted not to concur and set up this conference committee. So the compromise here was they keep the bill that we're following, keeps this provision in place, but changes it so it's not a broad exception for health and safety. It says you can wear a surgical or medical mask to prevent the spread of contagious diseases.
So this comes out everybody's reading it at the same time. The House is reading it and the Senate we're reading it. And then it's not just masks. There's suddenly campaign finance changes in the bill. So when the Senate gets around to taking it up, Senate Minority Whip Jay Choudhury says to Senate Rules Chair Rabin that the Democrats want to caucus. We need to look at this. So they give them, 20 minutes. And then the Senate's in recess for a bit, and the House hasn't done anything. And, whenever there's some sort of recess, it's always longer than that. So they all come back in. There were some Democrats missing earlier because I know Murdoch and Woodard were in Durham for NCCU's new chancellor being named. Blue wasn't there. There were a list of excused absences. But a lot of Democrats came back. And then it looked like they had, we expected debate, this sort of thing going on. Except that's not what happened. So I was going to take a picture of like, okay, they're back. It's time. Because, we reporters like to gripe about like having to wait for stuff because we're all sitting there ready and waiting for them to get their business together. And I see some people get up and move around, which is kind of what they do. And then I realize all the Democrats are gone. And Berger calls, he says further, is there debate? And all the Democrats are gone. And then there's no debate, no discussion at all. And so Berger lists each Democrat, like, Senator Murdoch, Senator Rotlick, and nobody's there. And so the story we have is the video of kind of like the long pause. So it's not drama on the floor, like drama on the floor. It's all very quiet and procedural. But, the Democrats were doing this to make a point. Then session ends, a staffer comes over and tells the press, we're going to have a press conference in a little bit, and then we're scrambling on all of this. And then Democrats basically said they did it to get attention. And they're mad, not just about the changes in the finance law, which everyone is still figuring out. They're figuring out what they think about the mask bill, but because the Republicans did this.
Well, the thing, when you put changes like this that haven't gone through committee yet in a conference report on the day of, that means there's no chance for any other lawmaker to amend those changes, right? You have to accept it fully as is.
It's an CRs are up-down votes.
Right.
You can still debate it.
Yes. But there's no chance
no chance to read it either, which is what their gripe was.
Yeah, the question of the day, the controversy, basically overarching controversy, was this issue of process and how a bill that is about masks and protests and concealing identity and all this kind of stuff ends up with this section at the end that deals with very in the weeds issues about campaign finance, and then basically, everyone in the building is trying to figure out what exactly is happening here. What will this change? What are the implications? What could it mean for Democrats reporting out this is happening, being proposed and passed in the middle of a very contentious, a very big election campaign?
Where were things left in the House? I stayed after the Senate and talked to Senate Leader Berger. You talked to Speaker Moore.
Yeah, so the House Republicans caucused after the House session. They were going to come back on Thursday itself, but they decided to hold off until Tuesday of this week. So they're holding off. The Senate passed this bill. Mm-hmm. So this bill with the
20-0.
The new language on masks with this rewritten version of the health and safety provision exception and this big campaign finance piece at the end of it, that's passed the Senate. It's going to be up for a vote in the House, most likely on Tuesday, and then it could be to Governor Cooper's desk.
Kyle, how do you think this kind of sets the tone for the rest of session, or even just this week of session, the way how contentious things have become?
This may be the most drama on the floor we've seen so far this session. There's been contentious bills like with the ICE bill, but it's definitely not setting up a great working relationship for the rest. We still haven't even gotten to the budget, which is also usually done as a conference report, which is a source of tension among Democrats. So it could be a hint of what's to come.
Well, it's also tension among Republicans, because I asked Berger in the midst of all this other drama on Thursday about where things stood with the budget and if he had met with Moore. He said that indeed he had, and they are nowhere close to any sort of agreement. So before you even get to Democrats being upset about it, the Republicans are not happy with each other either. So I think we're in for it's legislative summer. All right, we have to take a quick break. We'll be right back. When we come back, we'll talk about abortion law and early voting and our picks for headliner of the week. We'll be right back.
AI is incredible. It can teach you how to fry an egg and even write a poem, pirate style. Yarr! But it knows nothing about your work. Slackbot is different. It doesn't just know the facts. It knows your schedule. It can turn a brainstorm into a brief. And it doesn't need to be taught. Because Slackbot isn't just another AI. It's AI that knows your work as well as you do. Visit slack.com/meet Slackbot to learn more.
Get in the game with the college-branded Venmo debit card. Wreck your team with every tap and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash, a new rewards program from Venmo. No monthly fee, no minimum balance. Just school pride and spending power. Get in the game and sign up for the Venmo debit card at venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan, here with Kyle Ingram and Avi Bajpai. Before the break, we talked about the Senate drama over the CR on the mask bill with campaign finance, and this week we will see whatever ensuing drama in the House comes as a result of that. Also, Speaker Moore had mentioned after session on Wednesday that the ICE bill is still a priority. That is probably going to be a contentious situation too. We'll see if that ends up coming up this week or not. But let's move on to something else controversial, abortion. North Carolina's abortion law changed last year to restrict it after the first trimester with multiple exceptions. Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, the Republican nominee for governor, said that he would like to see a heartbeat bill, which bans abortion generally around 5 or 6 weeks gestation. Now, if he sent a bill, he could sign it if he wins governor and becomes governor, but it is up to the legislature to actually write and vote and pass a bill. So I asked Senate Leader Berger, in light of, the renewed attention from Josh Stein's TV ad on Robinson, his position on abortion, what Berger would like to do. And because obviously he's part of the Senate Republican leadership and there's an election, things will change. And that's a little bit what Berger says, but you can hear for yourself in his own words what he said about what he'd like to see for abortion legislation this year and next year.
I've made it clear that as far as this session, we have no intention of making any changes. I personally would not be in favor of making any changes next year. We will see what happens as far as the election and what the majorities look like in both the House and the Senate next year, and we'll just see what happens. I can just speak to where I am, right, and you can talk to other individual members who may or may not be back as to what their position would be.
So we shall see. Berger is running for election again. So are plenty of other Republican senators. They have a supermajority now, but just barely. The House Republicans have supermajority, but just barely. And so the elections and control of the legislature will be a big determination of what kind of abortion law there might be, regardless of who wins governor. There's also a ruling in a lawsuit, Avi. What do people need to know about that?
Yeah, this was the lawsuit that Planned Parenthood filed last year against this abortion law, SB Senate Bill 20, that challenges two specific provisions. So there's a provision in there that says if you have an abortion after 12 weeks of gestation, it has to be in a hospital. That provision was temporarily blocked by a judge. There's another provision that talks about intrauterine pregnancies and, documenting that there's an intrauterine pregnancy before a physician can prescribe medication abortions. So two very specific challenges there. Both of those provisions were blocked last fall by a federal judge, and there was a hearing this past week. Attorneys for Planned Parenthood, attorneys for the NC Department of Justice, and also legislative leaders made their arguments. That ruling on whether or not to make the injunction on those two provisions permanent could come as soon as Monday, today.
Okay. Other things that are going on with the election coming up and early voting. Kyle, what's the latest people need to know?
Yeah, so every election, the State Board of Elections has to approve early voting plans for all the different counties. Counties make their own. And what happens in North Carolina is if a county board of elections can't unanimously agree on an early voting plan, then the state board has to come in and say what the plan is going to be. So typically what these disagreements break down upon is things like Sunday voting, where Republicans are typically opposed to having Sunday open as an early voting day, while Democrats push for it. So when we had this meeting with the State Board of Elections last week, they're going through all these counties that have disagreed mostly on Sunday voting, and they're siding with primarily the Democrats and saying we're going to go ahead and have Sunday voting. But things were a little different this time because there's been some tension about the fact that the State Board of Elections asked county boards to get their early voting plans together several months earlier than usual. And they didn't necessarily give county boards any reason to do it earlier than usual, but what Republicans have criticized the board for is they're saying, well, there's currently legislation that's being battled in court that would restructure state and local boards of elections. So they're accusing them of doing this early to get around that change and approve the early voting plans as they want them before the composition of the board itself could change.
Okay. We've talked about a lot of serious things on this podcast, so let's go to our headliners of the week, which are significantly lighter to end this episode. Avi, what's your headliner?
Well, my headliner is a slight slight complaint.
Airing of the grievances.
But interesting, very interesting to learn that when you visit the federal, I don't know if this is a rule for all federal courthouses, but the federal courthouse, Middle District of North Carolina in Greensboro, when you walk in, you go through this, what's it called, magnetometer or mag or whatever.
A metal detector?
Yeah, but there's a word for that. I mean, people listening can correct me if I butchered that, then my apologies. But you have to take your shoes off, which was, the last time I had to do that was at the airport. I didn't know.
Was it in an airplane, a courthouse airplane?
Yeah.
But worse than that is that you can't bring your phone or your laptop in. Every federal courthouse in North Carolina I've been to, you can't, if you're a member of the public, which we are, no phone or computer or even an Apple Watch allowed in the courtroom. That makes our job so much harder.
Why?
I don't know why. I think they don't want disruptions during the proceedings, but we live in the 21st century. That happens. When we go to the Senate, before they start the session, Phil Berger says, everyone please silence your phones. They could do that in court too.
Reporters don't get water in the Senate though. Do they get water in the courthouse?
I drink water in the courthouse. Nobody saw me.
There were water fountains. I will just say that I am, it would be great if we could bring in our phones, we could record these arguments, but I will just say that it is great that the quality of the mics, you could hear the arguments well.
Depends on which courthouse you're in, because some are bad.
I was in was great, so I'll just say that.
All right, so all of our judicial branch listeners tell us.
Third floor, Greensboro Courthouse is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Well, speaking of branches of government, Kyle, what is your headliner?
My headliner, we'll get a little meta with it this week. My headliner is lawmakers who listen to our headliners.
So all of y'all.
Yes. Last week, I was watching House Committee, and Representative Pricey Harrison, I talked to her after, and she said that she went to see Challengers after we talked about it during our headliners last week. So appreciate that.
Well, also this past week, Representative Servania came up to me after a House session, and she had listened to last week's headliner. She also likes Espresso from Sabrina Carpenter, and she suggested Eminem's song Houdini for a summer playlist. So I'll go ahead and also include something from the House. My headliner is Summer Berry. So got to be and see, as Ag Commissioner Troxler would say and promote. I really like all sorts of berries. I've been carrying around a purse that has strawberries on it, which starts conversations with people, including this week with a House Sergeant at Arms who leaned over and said, so do you like strawberries? And we talked about which fruit or which berry is best. And I'm going to say blackberries followed by raspberries. So that's
strawberries for me.
Okay.
Justice for blueberries.
All right, there you go. All right, we're out of time. We'll have another drama-filled week at the legislature. For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan. For Kyle Ingram and Avi Bajpai and everyone else here, we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.